The year is 627 AD. The Arabian desert shimmers under the scorching sun. A battle is about to begin that will shape the course of history. This is the Battle of the Trench, also known as the Battle of the Confederates. On one side are the forces of Medina, led by the Prophet Muhammad. On the other, a massive army of Meccan pagans and their allies has come to crush the nascent Muslim community. Leading the Medinan defenders is a brilliant and fearless general, Khalid ibn al-Walid. Known as the Sword of God, Khalid is a master strategist and a warrior of unmatched skill. He will face his greatest challenge yet as he defends Medina against overwhelming odds. The fate of Islam hangs in the balance. The stage is set for a clash of civilizations, a battle that will test the mettle of men and the will of God. The outcome will determine not only the future of Islam, but also the destiny of the Arabian Peninsula and beyond. To understand the Battle of the Trench, we must journey back to 7th century Arabia, a time and place where the sands of the desert held the secrets of ancient civilizations and the winds carried tales of trade and conquest. The Arabian Peninsula, a land of scorching deserts and vibrant oases, was a crossroads of ancient trade routes. These routes connected the East and the West, bringing not only goods but also ideas and cultures that mingled in the bustling markets and caravanserais. Mecca, home to the Kaaba, a sacred shrine revered by Arab tribes, was a center of commerce and pilgrimage. Pilgrims from all over the Arabian Peninsula would travel to Mecca, bringing with them their diverse traditions and beliefs, making the city a melting pot of cultures and a hub of economic activity. Amidst this backdrop, a new faith had emerged in Mecca, Islam. This new religion, with its message of monotheism, was revolutionary in a society that worshipped multiple deities and held tribal affiliations above all else. The Prophet Muhammad, a respected trader known for his honesty and integrity, began preaching a message of monotheism, social justice, and the equality of all mankind. His teachings emphasized the worship of one God, Allah, and called for the end of social inequalities and injustices that plagued Meccan society. His message resonated with many, especially the poor and marginalized, who found hope and dignity in his words. The promise of a just society where everyone was equal under the eyes of Allah attracted a growing number of followers. However, it also threatened the established order of Meccan society, particularly its wealthy elite who controlled trade and religious practices. These elites saw Muhammad's teachings as a direct threat to their power and influence, as well as to the economic benefits they derived from the existing religious practices centered around the Kaaba. As Islam gained followers, tensions between the Muslims and the Meccan pagans escalated. The new converts faced increasing hostility and persecution from those who felt their way of life was under attack. Persecution against the Muslims intensified, forcing the Prophet Muhammad and his followers to flee Mecca in 622 AD and seek refuge in the city of Yathrib, later renamed Medina. This migration was not just a physical journey, but a significant spiritual and social shift for the nascent Muslim community. This event, known as the Hijrah, marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar. It symbolizes the transition from persecution to the establishment of a community where the principles of Islam could be practiced freely and openly. The migration to Medina marked a turning point in Islamic history. In Medina, the Prophet Muhammad was not just a spiritual leader, but also a statesman and a community organizer, laying the foundations for a society based on Islamic principles. It was in Medina that the Prophet Muhammad established the first Muslim community, a community governed by the principles of Islam. This community, known as the Ummah, was built on the values of brotherhood, justice, and mutual support, setting a precedent for future Islamic societies. However, the threat from Mecca remained. The Meccan leaders were not willing to accept the rise of Islam and the growing strength of the Muslim community in Medina. The Meccan leaders, determined to crush the fledgling Muslim community, saw the Muslims' growing strength in Medina as a direct challenge to their authority and a threat to their economic interests. They began to plot and plan ways to undermine and destroy the Muslim community, setting the stage for a series of confrontations that would shape the future of Islam in the Arabian Peninsula. Faced with an enemy that vastly outnumbered his forces, Khalid ibn al-Walid knew that a conventional defense of Medina would be futile. The Meccan army was not only larger but also better equipped and more experienced in open field battles. Khalid, a master tactician, understood that he needed to think outside the box to protect his people and their city. He needed a strategy that would level the playing field, a strategy that would exploit the strength of his army while neutralizing the enemy's numerical advantage. Khalid spent countless hours analyzing the terrain, the enemy's tactics, and the resources at his disposal. He knew that the key to victory lay in using the environment to his advantage. Khalid's master plan centered around the digging of a deep, wide trench around the vulnerable northern approaches to Medina. This trench was not just a physical barrier, but a psychological one as well. It would force the enemy to rethink their approach and buy valuable time for the defenders. This ingenious defensive barrier, a novelty in Arabian warfare, would serve as a formidable obstacle to the advancing Meccan cavalry, the backbone of their military might. The trench would disrupt their momentum and make it difficult for them to launch a coordinated attack. The trench, dug by the Muslims with unwavering faith and determination, stretched for miles, effectively cutting off the enemy's direct access to Medina. The community came together, working day and night, driven by a shared sense of purpose and the will to protect their home. To further bolster the city's defenses, Khalid strategically positioned his troops along the trench, concentrating his archers at key points to rain down arrows on any enemy attempting to cross. These archers were trained to be precise and deadly, turning the trench into a lethal zone for any who dared to breach it. But Khalid's strategy went beyond just digging a trench. He knew that a static defense would not be enough to secure victory. He understood the importance of intelligence and deception in warfare. Information was power, and Khalid intended to use it to his full advantage. He deployed scouts to monitor the enemy's movements, providing him with vital information about their numbers, composition, and morale. These scouts were the eyes and ears of the army, ensuring that Khalid was always one step ahead. He also spread misinformation, leaking false reports about Muslim strength and intentions to confuse and mislead the enemy. This psychological warfare was designed to sow doubt and hesitation among the Meccan ranks, making them second-guess their plans and creating opportunities for the defenders to exploit. Khalid's use of deception was masterful. By creating an illusion of greater strength and readiness, he managed to keep the enemy off balance. The Meccans, unsure of what to believe, found themselves in a state of constant uncertainty. This, combined with the physical barrier of the trench, created a formidable defense that would be remembered for generations. Section 4. The siege begins. A test of faith and fortitude. The Meccan army, a formidable force of over 10,000 men, arrived at the outskirts of Medina, confident of victory. They had prepared meticulously for this moment, believing that their sheer numbers and military prowess would easily overwhelm the Muslim defenders. They had come to crush the Muslims once and for all, to extinguish the flame of a burgeoning faith that threatened their dominance in the region. The Meccan leaders, driven by a mix of fear and pride, saw this as their final opportunity to reclaim their lost honor. However, to their astonishment, they were met not by a conventional army ready to engage in open battle, but by a seemingly insurmountable obstacle: the trench. This trench, a strategic masterstroke, had been dug under the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad, inspired by the Persian tactics of warfare. The trench, a testament to the Muslims' faith and determination, threw the Meccan war machine into disarray. It was a defensive measure that showcased the ingenuity and resourcefulness of the Muslim community, who had worked tirelessly to prepare for this moment. Their cavalry, accustomed to swift maneuvers and decisive charges, were rendered ineffective by the deep chasm that separated them from their enemy. The trench neutralized their greatest advantage, forcing them to rethink their strategy and adapt to an unfamiliar form of warfare. The siege of Medina had begun, a siege that would test the limits of human endurance and the strength of faith. Both sides settled in for a protracted standoff, with the Meccans hoping to starve the Muslims into submission, while the defenders relied on their faith and resilience to see them through. For weeks, the two armies faced each other across the trench, a no-man's land of scorching sand and swirling dust. The harsh desert environment added to the challenges, with both sides enduring the relentless heat and the scarcity of water. The Meccans, Frustrated by their inability to break through, the Muslim defences resorted to launching volleys of arrows and stones into the city. They hoped to weaken the resolve of the defenders and create chaos within the city walls. Food and supplies began to dwindle within Medina, and the defenders, outnumbered and under constant pressure, faced mounting hardship and uncertainty. The scarcity of resources tested their physical and mental fortitude as they struggled to maintain their strength and morale. Yet, despite the perilous circumstances, the spirit of the Muslims remained resolute. They drew strength from their unwavering faith, believing that their struggle was not in vain, and that divine intervention would guide them through this trial. Their faith in God and their belief in the righteousness of their cause fueled their determination. They prayed together, seeking solace and strength from their shared beliefs, and found unity in their common purpose. They knew that they were fighting not just for their own survival, but for the future of Islam. Every moment of the siege was a testament to their courage and conviction, as they stood firm against overwhelming odds, determined to protect their faith and their community. Section 5. Turning the Tide, a Daring Gambit. As days turned into weeks, the siege of Medina dragged on. The Muslims, though resolute, were beginning to feel the strain of the prolonged standoff. Their supplies were running low, and the constant bombardment from the Meccan lines took its toll on morale. It was at this critical juncture that the tide of the battle began to turn, thanks to a combination of the Muslims' unwavering faith, Khalid's strategic acumen, and a stroke of fortune. One stormy night, a fierce wind swept across the battlefield, tearing down the tents of the Meccan camp and throwing their ranks into disarray. Seizing this opportunity, Khalid planned a daring maneuver. He dispatched a small but highly mobile force under the cover of darkness to attack the enemy camp. The attack, swift and unexpected, caught the Meccans off guard, sowing confusion and panic in their ranks. The Muslims, inspired by this bold gambit and reinvigorated by the sight of their enemy in disarray, fought with renewed vigor. The element of surprise, coupled with the Muslims' ferocity, had a devastating effect on the Meccans, who began to doubt their ability to break the siege.